All right, we're about to explore a connection that sounds, well, a little out there. We're going to look at the strange, microscopic rules of quantum physics and connect them to the very human feelings of faith and anxiety. I know it sounds pretty complex, but you'll see the link is actually surprisingly direct.
So let's start with a feeling you definitely know. Have you ever worried so much about something? A difficult conversation, a big presentation, maybe a doctor's appointment, that the lead up was just awful. And then when it actually happened, you were like, oh, okay, I can handle this. Why is that?
Well, it all comes down to our mind's incredible ability to project itself into the future. When we're anticipating a problem, our mind just runs wild, magnifying every possible bad outcome until the misery feels huge. But then the problem actually gets here, and we just deal. And what's funny is, the same thing is true for joy. The excitement building up to a vacation or a party often feels way more intense than the event itself, which just flies by. It's all about that mental projection.
And this is where things get really, really interesting. To understand why our minds do this, why they get so tangled up in all these future possibilities, we're not going to look at psychology, nope. We're going to look at physics. Because weirdly enough, the answer is hiding in the fundamental rules of quantum mechanics.
Okay, first thing we need to wrap our heads around is this idea called superposition. In the quantum world, a tiny particle doesn't have to be in just one single state. It can actually be in a whole bunch of possible states, all at the same time. Think of it like a coin spinning in the air. While it's spinning, it's kind of both heads and tails. It's only when it lands that it's forced to pick one. That in-between state, that's superposition.
So, what makes the spinning coin finally land on one side? In the quantum world, there's this thing called the wave function collapse. This is the exact moment a conscious observer, someone looking or measuring, interacts with the system. And that simple act of looking forces all those maybe states to just vanish, and they all collapse into one single definite reality. I mean, think about that for a second. The observer basically creates the outcome just by looking.
So let's just walk through that real quick. Step 1. You've got a whole bunch of possibilities existing at once. Step 2. A conscious observer shows up. Step 3. The act of observing makes all those possibilities collapse. And step 4. A single reality is chosen. This is, at its core, how reality seems to work on the tiniest levels.
Okay, that's some cool physics, for sure. But what on earth does that have to do with you worrying about paying your bills? Or your job? How can a process happening with subatomic particles explain the anxiety we feel every single day?
Well, here's the bridge. When we're anxious, our mind is basically putting itself into its own state of superposition. It's running what you could call a what-if multiverse model. It's exploring every single negative outcome at once. What if I mess up? What if they get mad? What if the absolute worst thing happens? All of these potential negative futures are just swirling around in our heads all at the same time.
And this mental multiverse has very, very real effects on our bodies. This is not just harmless daydreaming. This constant state of worry leads to things like being on edge all the time or not being able to sleep. It floods our bodies with stress hormones. And over time, it can actually lead to serious physical illnesses. These mental projections are physically hurting us.
So here's the key takeaway. Anxiety is basically the mental version of being stuck in superposition. Our mind is acting like an observer that's looking at all the negative possibilities at the exact same time, but it refuses to just pick one and collapse the system. We get trapped in that storm of what-ifs. Which, of course, brings us to the most important question, right? If our anxiety is this wave function of worry, how in the world do we collapse it? How do we stop watching all the scary futures and just pick one present moment to actually live in?
The answer here is faith. And hold on, this isn't necessarily about religion. In this way of thinking, faith is an active mental force. It's the act of you becoming the conscious observer for your own mind. It's the decision to deliberately collapse that what-if multiverse by choosing to focus on one single constructive outcome with total conviction.
When you do this, faith acts like a brake. It stops your mind from going on these uncontrolled trips into dozens of scary virtual futures. By choosing ahead of time which reality you're going to focus on, the one where you handle it, the one where you succeed, you basically erase all those other negative possibilities from your mind before they can do any damage.
So what's the game plan? How do you actually do this? Well, here are 3 steps that are kind of like a wonder drug for anxiety. First, you have to consciously bring your mind back to right here, right now. Just stay in the now. Second,
Actively work on building a positive attitude, because that helps you choose a better outcome to focus on. And third, you have to master the art of crossing the bridge when it comes. Stop trying to solve problems that don't even exist yet.
And listen, this is not just some feel-good wishful thinking. This connects to real science. There's a field called epigenetics that shows how our environment, and that includes our thoughts, our beliefs, our moods, can actually change how our genes work. Your state of mind can literally tweak your biology. Your convictions have real power.
So, the final thought here, the big takeaway, is incredibly empowering. You are not just a passive victim of your anxious thoughts. You are the conscious observer of your own mind. You hold the power to collapse that wave function of worry. So the question to leave you with is this: what reality are you going to choose to create today?